Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty fascinating today. We're cracking open Umberto Eco's On Beauty.
Ooh, this is a good one.
It is. I know our listeners are really into art and history and philosophy, so
Perfect for this.
yeah, we're going to kind of take everyone on this whirlwind tour of how beauty has been, thought about and wrestled with across Western civilization.
And wrestled with is definitely the right term because, Eco doesn't really give us like a nice, easy definition, right?
No, he doesn't.
He takes us on a journey instead. It's kind of refreshing, actually.
Yeah. And so we're starting way, way back,
Okay.
ancient Greece.
All right, the beginning.
And I don't know about you, but I've always kind of had this vision of ancient Greece, those perfect bodies, all those marble statues, that's,
The ideal.
yeah, the ideal. But Eco kind of throws us for a loop here, doesn't he?
He does. It's really interesting how, for the early Greeks, beauty wasn't this separate thing. You know what I mean? We think about aesthetics today. Their idea of beauty was totally bound up with morality and purpose.
Oh, okay. So a beautiful object also had to be a good object, ethically speaking.
Exactly. The best example is that saying from the Delphic Oracle, right?
Yeah.
The most beautiful is the most just.
Oh, wow.
They weren't just oh, that's pretty. It had to fit into some higher order.
Okay, that makes total sense. But what about Helen of Troy?
Oh, good point.
That's legendary beauty, right? Started a war, they say. 1,000 ships. That had to be purely aesthetic appreciation, right? Come on.
That's such a great example.
Yeah.
Because it kind of shows how complex this whole thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Helen's beauty, it was powerful stuff, even seen as almost divinely inspired, but it was never just about looks for them.
Okay.
It was all bound up in destiny and fate, the fate of nations.
Wow.
So it had this weight. It wasn't just, ooh, pretty face.
So even with Helen, beauty is tied to something bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But things do start to shift a bit when we get to the age of Pericles, and we see this, more distinct aesthetic beauty emerging, especially in sculpture.
Okay, so now we're getting to the statues.
Now we're getting to the statues. Yeah.
That I was picturing. Okay.
Exactly. Think of the Discobolus, that statue of the discus thrower.
Okay.
It emphasizes the human form, the proportions. It's reflecting a new fascination with the beauty of the human body itself. But it wasn't just about physical perfection either. They saw it as this harmony of body and the soul.
So beauty went from being mostly ethical to also looking incredible.
In a way, yeah. And Socrates, for instance, he divided beauty into 3 types.
Oh, okay.
So first you've got ideal beauty found in nature, like a flower's symmetry.
Right.
Then you have spiritual beauty, which is about the soul, right? Someone's inner goodness can make them beautiful no matter what they look like.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then there's the third type.
Okay, what's the third one?
Useful beauty, where an object's beauty is tied to its function. So a tool, right?
Yeah.
If it's crafted really well, perfectly designed for its job, that's beautiful. And we still see this today. Think about modern design.
Oh, yeah.
Like a sleek chair.
Right.
That's comfy and looks amazing.
Yeah, that's a good example.
That's useful beauty.
So basically, design principles we still value today, they were thinking about.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago? That's pretty crazy.
It is. But it gets even, deeper. Because then Plato comes along, right? Student of Socrates. And he says that true beauty, or what he calls splendor, it actually exists kind of independently of the object itself.
Whoa, okay. Now that's getting a little abstract for me.
Yeah.
Help me out here.
Think of it this way. Socrates himself, wasn't exactly, a model.
Right.
But his wisdom, his virtue, they were seen as a form of beauty. Splendor beyond what he looked like. It's the charisma of a leader.
Yeah, okay.
They may not be traditionally attractive,
Yeah.
but there's something about them. This inner strength that's captivating.
Wow, that's a powerful way to think about it. It's not just skin deep, it's something deeper.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about harmony and perfection either. Eco talks about this really interesting contrast. Apollonian and Dionysian beauty.
Ooh, I've heard those terms, but never really connected them to beauty.
Right. So Apollonian, named after the god Apollo, it represents order, harmony, reason. Think symmetry. Greek temples, those perfect proportions.
Got it.
But then you've got Dionysian, named after Dionysus. He's the god of, partying.
Fun.
Letting loose. So Dionysian beauty is about chaos, disruption. that raw energy of nature.
So like a thunderstorm, would that be Dionysian beauty, even though it's like wild and unpredictable?
Exactly. And Eco suggests that both of these were at play in how the Greeks thought about beauty. It wasn't just this static perfection.
Okay.
It was this tension between order and chaos, light and shadow.
My mind is officially blown. I'm starting to see why eco doesn't give us that one easy definition, you know? It was already like this complex idea way back then.
For sure. And it gets even more complex as we move into the Middle Ages, which actually weren't as dark as we might think, especially when it comes to beauty.
So from like the sunny shores of ancient Greece, we're now in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, big change.
And okay, I'll admit, when I think Middle Ages, knights, castles, maybe a gloomy cathedral or two, I don't exactly picture like cutting edge art. You know what I mean?
Right. Not exactly the Renaissance.
Not quite, yeah. But Eco, he kind of challenges that, doesn't he?
He does. It's fascinating. The medieval world was actually like bursting with color
Mm.
and light, especially in their art. It's just a different kind of beauty, I guess.
Okay, color and light now you're talking. Tell me more about this.
Well, think about illuminated manuscripts, for example.
Okay.
Ego talks about those amazing works by artists like uh, Beatus Fernando I and Sancha,
Mm.
or the Limburg brothers, that Visitation piece. Have you ever seen any of those up close?
Yeah, I've seen photos. They're incredible. Those colors, the gold leaf, it's like almost surreal.
It is. And for people back then, these weren't just like decorations. They believed those objects could actually like emanate light, almost a
Oh.
divine radiance.
Oh, wow. So beauty wasn't just reflecting light, it was like possessing it, like some spiritual energy almost.
That's a great way to put it. It's all tied to this idea of God as the ultimate source of light and goodness, right? Think about those stained glass windows in cathedrals.
Right.
They weren't just pretty. They were meant to bathe the whole space in colored light, this feeling of being like surrounded by the divine.
Wow, I can only imagine. Makes those drab castle images seem pretty off, doesn't it?
Right. And even their philosophy reflects this. Thomas Aquinas, he said claritas, which means luminosity. It's one of the three key components of beauty.
Oh, interesting.
Along with, proportion and integrity, which the Greeks loved, he adds this element of light, radiant light.
So beauty literally glowed for them. It shone from within, you know? That's so different from today, it feels like, where we're so focused on the surface of things.
It is. And this light and color wasn't just for religious stuff either.
Mm.
It was everywhere. Imagine nobles in these brightly colored clothes, reliquaries covered in jewels, even weapons. They were all decked out with designs and precious metals. They saw beauty in everything.
It's like they saw the world as one giant illuminated manuscript.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Now, as we move into the 18th century, this fascination with light sticks around, but it gets filtered through this new lens of reason and a growing awareness of individual emotion.
So we're in the age of enlightenment now, right?
Right.
Logic, reason. But you're saying feelings were still like bubbling under the surface.
Totally. The 18th century was full of contradictions. Like, on one hand, you have neoclassicism in architecture, all those grand buildings, clean lines, no more crazy Baroque stuff. It's back to the Greeks, basically. Order and balance.
So like a rejection of all the, what was it, the over-the-top style before?
Exactly. Simplicity, harmony, very Apollonian, right?
Right.
But here's the twist. Alongside this love of order, they become obsessed with ruins, like crumbling castles, temples overgrown with vines.
Wait, so they found beauty in like decay. That seems like the opposite of those perfect Greek forms.
It is, and it shows this shift toward a more subjective, emotional view of beauty. Artists and philosophers were looking for truth, personal experience, even if it meant confronting like darker emotions.
So it's not about striving for perfect forms anymore. It's about capturing something real, even if it's not beautiful in the traditional sense.
Exactly. Look at Jacques-Louis David's painting, The Death of Marat.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Stark, realistic portrayal of an assassination. Not exactly a cheerful subject.
Definitely not something I'd hang on my wall, but I get it. There's power in it.
Right. It's capturing the truth of a moment, even a tragic one. Beauty wasn't just about pretty pictures anymore. It could be about powerful emotions, even unsettling ones.
So that's a huge change in how people thought about beauty.
It is. And it leads to this crucial question. If beauty isn't just about pleasing forms or harmony, then what is it about? And luckily, a brilliant mind in the 18th century decided to tackle that very question.
All right, so we've gone from those Greek ideals of like harmony and purpose to the medieval world's radiant light and now the 18th century embracing those emotions and truth.
Quite a journey.
But now we're heading into the industrial age. I got to be honest, it's kind of hard to picture beauty thriving amidst like factories and smog, you know?
Yeah, it's a bit of a clash, isn't it? Eco uses this quote from Dickens' Hard Times
Right.
to paint a picture of this era.
Oh,
He talks about these industrial towns as bleak and monotonous. Interminable serpents of smoke trailed themselves over the sky. Not exactly a pretty postcard, right?
yikes. No, not exactly. Kind of sounds depressing, honestly.
It was, for many. But that's where it gets interesting. This ugliness, this feeling of like society going downhill, it sparked a reaction among artists.
Oh, okay.
They saw beauty as like an escape,
hmm
a way to rise above those harsh realities.
So it's like beauty became even more important because everything was so ugly, kind of like a rebellion.
Exactly. This is where we get the whole art for art's sake movement.
Mm.
Beauty was the highest value, something to pursue, just because, not because it's useful or moral or whatever.
Okay.
It was a pushback against all that utilitarianism of the industrial age. Like, no, beauty matters. It feeds our soul.
I love that, like fighting back against the machines with beauty as their weapon.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. And you see it in the art of the time. Eco talks about Thomas Couture's painting, The Romans of the Decadence.
Okay.
Big banquet scene, lots of luxury. But underneath it all, there's this sense of decay, moral decline. Many artists saw this as like reflecting their own society.
Oh, interesting.
So they tried to create beauty as like an antidote to that.
So it's like that tension between beauty and ugliness, trying to find meaning and beauty in a world that's kind of chaotic and overwhelming.
You got it. And in a way, isn't that what we're still dealing with today? We're constantly bombarded with stuff, images, information. It's easy to feel lost.
Totally.
Maybe that's why we still crave beauty so much, whether it's art or nature or music or just connecting with people.
Right.
It helps us like make sense of it all, find meaning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like beauty is this anchor reminding us there's still something good out there, something worth caring about.
That's a great way to put it. And this brings us to Eco's conclusion, which, of course, he doesn't give us a simple answer.
Figures.
He reminds us that beauty has taken on so many different forms throughout history, each shaped by, the values and worldviews of the time.
Yeah, he even has that quote from Xenophanes, the Greek philosopher.
Oh, yeah.
The one about how if oxen could paint, their gods would look like oxen.
Classic. It's funny, but it makes you think, right? Our idea of beauty is always influenced by who you are.
Totally. So what does all this mean for us? The beauty seekers out there listening. What's the takeaway from all this art history?
Well, maybe the biggest thing is beauty isn't static. It's always changing. It's not a destination, it's a journey.
I like that.
It's about being open to new experiences,
No.
questioning what we think is beautiful.
So maybe true beauty isn't just about what we see, but how we see it. Cultivating that sense of wonder, letting ourselves be surprised by beauty wherever we find it.
That's it. The real beauty might not be in any one thing, but in that act of seeking it, that conversation we're always having with the world.
Wow, that's a really great way to think about it. It's about being open to that possibility, finding beauty even in unexpected places.
Absolutely. Even in those messy, chaotic parts of life.
Well, that's a really inspiring note to end on. I'm definitely going to check out Ecos on Beauty now.
You should. It's a fascinating read.
Thanks for taking us on this deep dive today. And to all you listeners, keep seeking that beauty, keep asking those questions, and most importantly, keep those conversations going. Who knows what you might discover?